A strategic fund worth some 72 billion US dollars will be allocated for people and corporations in South Korea to invest in promising areas like AI and renewable energy, President Yo-jong says, as part of efforts to seek and realize a long-term economic growth. High-level officials from Seoul are in the U.S. looking to seal a deal with Washington before the hefty tariffs take effect as of August 1st. Hyundai Motor Group Chair Chung Il-sun is also joining business-led efforts to avert the U.S. tariffs. South Korea's LG Energy Solution says it sealed over a $4 billion LFP battery supply deal, with reports saying the Korean firm will supply the batteries to Tesla. President Yo-jong held another emergency economic meeting today to unveil his blueprint for the country's long-term growth strategy. That includes creating a large-scale fund for investments in AI and other future growth engines. Our Presidential Office correspondent Yoon Jung-min starts us off.
The emergency meeting on economic affairs will shift to one seeking growth engines in the long term as the fully fledged new government takes shape. That was according to President Lee Jae-myung on Wednesday as he presided over the third emergency economic meeting at his office, hinting at where the economy is headed for the next 5 years.
우리 국민 주권 정부는 실용적인 시장주의 정부가 될 것입니다. 성장의 기회와 동력을 만들기 위해서 기업을 또 기업 활동을 지원하고 격려하는 그런 정부가 될 것이라고.
He promised to create a fund of over 100 trillion won, worth some 72 billion US dollars, which the people and corporations take part in to make investments in areas deemed strategically important, such as AI and renewable energy. The liberal-leaning leader also vowed to cut red tape to encourage businesses in Korea and launch another task force to revamp penalties too heavy on firms.
과도한 경제 형벌로 기업의 경영 활동이 위축되지 않도록 정부 내에 경제 형벌 합리화 TF도 곧바로 가동하도록 하겠습니다. 이번 정기 국회에서부터 본격적인 정비를 해서 1년 내 30% 정비 같은 명확한 목표를.
He was pointing to a case where breach of trust is abused to place penalties too heavy on corporations, raising questions about whether it fits into a global standard. Another pillar for growth was on achieving balanced regional growth for a country where too much concentration on its capital area has often been cited as a factor that threatens the sustainability of the nation. He vowed to draw up rules and policies to make sure resources are used in an efficient way, noting as an example his consumption voucher policy that favors people living in rural areas over those in the capital. Also hinted at was aggressive belt-tightening in fiscal policy so that more funds can be used for key policies.
With regard to next year's budget, President Lee ordered a bold restructuring of budgets that yield very little or are used routinely.
Details of the new government's growth strategy will be unveiled in August, based on what was discussed on Wednesday, apparently taking into account not so favorable conditions, such as low growth and higher prices. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
We are now just a day away from the final tariff talks between Seoul and Washington. From government officials to economic heavyweights, Team Korea is all in for the final push to strike a deal. Our Choi Soo-hyung reports.
With just 1 day left before final tariff talks with the U.S., the South Korean government and business community are mounting an all-out effort. After Hanwha Vice Chairman Kim Dong-kwan and Samsung Chairman Lee Jae-yong left for Washington, D.C., Hyundai Motor Group's Chairman Chung Il-sun flew out on Wednesday Korean time. Chung leads the world's third largest automaker and in March this year announced a massive $21 billion investment in the U.S. with the Trump administration. Hanwha's Kim is expected to push for a Korea-proposed shipbuilding cooperation project, where Samsung's E is focusing on expanding semiconductor investments and strengthening technology partnerships. Samsung Electronics will have already invested more than $37 billion in the U.S. by 2030 and is building a semiconductor foundry in Texas. These bargaining chips, aligned with Washington's semiconductor revival strategy, could give Korea an edge at the negotiation table. In Washington, D.C., Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Koo Yoon-chol, Industry Minister Kim Jong-kwan, and Trade Minister Yo Han-gu met with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick on Tuesday local time for about 2 hours. The meeting with Lutnick comes just ahead of final negotiations scheduled with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on July 31st, widening communication channels between the two sides. Also on July 31st, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun will meet U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Washington to propose concrete initiatives in emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence, as a third pillar of Korea-U.S. cooperation, alongside their security alliance and free trade agreement. After the latest talks, the presidential office said President Lee Jae-myung was briefed on the same day and responded that the country will seek a beneficial deal with the U.S. under the principle of prioritizing national interest while keeping the terms within Korea's limits. Korea's top priority in the deals is cutting the 25% reciprocal tariffs imposed by the Trump administration on automobiles and related parts, alongside a 50% tariff on steel and new duties on key exports such as semiconductors. With Japan and the EU already getting tariffs down to 15%, including on autos, pressure is mounting on export-dependent Korea. Seoul's best-case scenario is a full tariff exemption, but given other countries' results, cutting tariffs to 15% is seen as the most realistic one. With autos, South Korea's biggest exports to the U.S., any deal above 15% could leave manufacturers trailing Japan and Europe, casting doubt on negotiation success. Cheon, Arirang News.
South Korean battery manufacturer LG Energy Solution announced a landmark battery supply contract on Wednesday. Sources report that the batteries might be supplied to the U.S. tech giant Tesla. Our Park Junan has more.
Leading battery manufacturer LG Energy Solution announced on Wednesday that it had signed a landmark 6 trillion won, or around $4.3 billion contract to supply lithium iron phosphate batteries for energy storage systems. Although LG did not disclose the client's identity due to confidentiality obligations, Reuters reported that it is Tesla, the US-based tech-driven automotive and energy company. The 3-year contract starting on August 1st includes an option to extend it up to 7 years with additional supplies. This deal will likely bolster South Korea's leadership in the global battery industry, with LG positioned as the only Korean company producing LFP batteries for energy storage systems in North America. Also, experts claim that LG is the only sailmaker in the market capable of supplying more than 15 gigawatt-hours per year of LFP batteries in the United States. LG, which operates major U.S. production sites in Ohio, Tennessee, and Michigan, is considered a suitable company to benefit from rising U.S. tariffs on Chinese batteries, currently around 41% and projected to exceed 58% next year. The tariff has reduced the cost advantage of Chinese batteries, with prices expected to rise from the current $73 per cell to $87 by 2026. As demand for non-Chinese battery suppliers in the U.S. grows, LG is accelerating its energy storage systems contracts, recently securing a 4 gigawatt-hour deal with Delta Electronics. The company expects strong profit growth in the second half of 2025, driven by energy storage system sales amid a slowdown in EV battery demand. Park Junan, Arirang News.
North Korea has broken the silence and issued back-to-back statements toward both South Korea and the U.S. this week. Seoul is pondering whether to downsize the joint military drills, while Washington maintained its stance that it's open to dialogue with Pyongyang. For more on this, we turn to our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung. Welcome back, Bo-kyung.
Thanks for having me, Tamin.
So, Bo-kyung, why don't we start with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister Kim Yo-jong's statements towards South Korea this week. That was the first official statement from North Korea toward the Lee Jae-myung administration, right?
Right. Amid Seoul trying to ease the tensions on the Korean peninsula and to resume talks with Pyongyang, Kim Yo-jong released a statement on Monday and said President Lee Jae-myung is no different from his predecessor in blindly adhering to ROK-US alliance. While saying that Seoul's recent suspension of anti-Pyongyang broadcasts is not something that deserves any appreciation, she also said that Pyongyang is not interested in any proposal put forward by Seoul. To this, the Unification Ministry said this shows the high walls of distrust between the two Koreas, emphasizing that it will continue to pursue reconciliation with the North.
The government will stay steady and consistent in pursuing reconciliation, cooperation, and peaceful coexistence on the Korean peninsula without overreacting to the North's responses.
The presidential office also issued a similar message, saying it will consistently take the necessary actions to make a peninsula without hostility and conflict. Regarding Kim Yo-jong's remarks, one expert said the regime is asking more from Seoul, especially regarding its alliance with the U.S.
The message points to a more fundamental issue, the nature of the South Korea-U.S. alliance. It suggests that the future of inter-Korean dialogue and the restoration of relations will depend on how much autonomy South Korea can exercise from the U.S. in managing its relationship with the North.
Now, Bo-kyung, after Kim Yo-jong's remarks toward Seoul, the Unification Ministry mentioned downsizing ROK-US drills. What is that about?
Right. So Unification Minister Chung Dong-young said that he will propose to President Lee that the scale of the Seoul-Washington joint military drills be adjusted. And for those who are not familiar with the ROK-US joint military drills, South Korea and the U.S. conduct two major joint drills every year, Freedom Shield in March and Ilchi Freedom Shield in August. Both are command post exercises, a war game in which military leadership executes wartime scenarios. They are accompanied by various field training exercises, and U.S. strategic assets, too, are sometimes deployed to the peninsula. A lot of reporters asked the Defense Ministry whether there would be any changes regarding the joint drill.
The joint drills are proceeding as agreed between South Korea and the U.S., with no changes so far.
But one expert says there is a case of a drill having been suspended in 2018, and there could be changes made even at the last minute if the Korean and the U.S. leaders agree to do so.
Back in 2018, South Korea and the U.S. suspended joint military drills amid improving inter-Korean and U.S.-North Korea relations. While changing the current exercise schedule may be difficult if both leaders agree, a decision to adjust or pause the drills could still be made to support broader peace efforts.
So there's that for South Korea. And Kim Yo-jong also issued another message, this time directed at the U.S. What did she have to say this time?
Right. So she urged the U.S. to approach North Korea based on new thinking and asked to recognize Pyongyang as nuclear weapon state. She did admit that personal ties between the leaders, Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un, are not bad, but ruled out talks on Pyongyang's denuclearization. Still, the White House reaffirmed its readiness for dialogue with the regime's leader for denuclearization. The same expert said Pyongyang is asking Washington to make a decisive shift for talks to resume, tossing the ball in Trump's court.
It is calling for new thinking and the search for an exit strategy to recognize North Korea as a nuclear-armed state and begin a new round of nuclear arms reduction talks based on that premise.
So now we understand messages directed at Seoul and Washington. Now, in the meantime, how is North Korea doing with its own alliances, China and Russia?
Right. When it comes to Russia, their ties are strengthening more than ever, with Russia having launched first direct passenger flights between Moscow and Pyongyang for the first time in around 3 decades, and Pyongyang providing Moscow arms for its war in Ukraine. In fact, according to a report by South Korea's National Intelligence Service on on Wednesday. Such boosted ties with Russia, support from Moscow, and Pyongyang's troop dispatches have been cited as reasons behind Pyongyang's boosted confidence. The regime is considering itself to have a significantly more advantageous strategic position than before, which apparently led to Kim Yo-jong's back-to-back statements. Meanwhile, the relationship between Pyongyang and Beijing seems to have weakened a bit. North Korea's Central News Agency did show Kim Jong-un paying tribute at the Friendship Tower recently, symbolizing the ties between them on the occasion of the 72nd anniversary of the Armistice Agreement. The report on it was quite shorter than before, though, hinting at a bit strained relations between the two.
All right, Bo-kyung, thanks for that coverage tonight.
Thank you.
South Korea is hosting the third senior officials meeting in Incheon ahead of the upcoming APEC 2025 Korea. In related meetings, disaster management experts across the Asia-Pacific have gathered to strengthen international cooperation in tackling major disasters. Our Shin Ha-young has this report.
Natural disasters, including floods and earthquakes, continue to threaten millions around the world, and Asia-Pacific economies are no exception. Amid these challenges, South Korea's Ministry of the Interior and Safety is hosting this year's APEC meetings on disasters in the western port city of Incheon from Wednesday, with disaster management officials and experts from across the Asia-Pacific participating to strengthen cooperation on risk reduction. As part of the 3 days of meetings, the Emergency Preparedness Working Group convened on Wednesday to explore ways to strengthen practical cooperation with a focus on digital tools for disaster risk management. The Senior Disaster Management Officials Forum, scheduled for Thursday, is expected to build on those discussions and work toward actionable policy steps and stronger joint responses to emerging threats.
The key focus of this conference is to strengthen international cooperation in responding to complex disasters, such as climate change and pandemics. With its advanced ICT capabilities, South Korea has a well-developed early warning system and is well-positioned to contribute to global efforts, including the UN's Early Warning for All initiative.
Alongside the meetings, the Interior Ministry is partnering with New Zealand's National Emergency Management Agency to conduct joint disaster drills, collaborate on research, and share information regularly to help reduce disaster risks.
But from an emergency management perspective, the knowledge and the advancements that Korea has well in advance of New Zealand, we're really looking forward to understanding that, how we can share knowledge, how we can share our experiences to make both countries stronger, particularly, as I said earlier, in the light of the changing hazardscape that we all face.
A disaster safety exhibition featuring Korea's latest technologies will be open through Sunday, highlighting the country's innovations and efforts to expand its presence in the global disaster tech market. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
Now, following up with yesterday's report on the cultural heritage of Gyeongju, the host city of APEC 2025 Korea, our An Sung-jin also had a look at one of the traditional elements that the city looks to promote through the event.
Colorful hand-dyed fabrics and threads of silk. For artisan Park Sun-na, this is all a work of precision and pride. Every cut of the scissors and stitch sewn into silk reflect years of mastery in hanbok, Korea's traditional attire, but Park devotes her expertise beyond that, focusing on hanbok from the Shilla period.
In Shinla, even the silk was different. The clothes or hanbok was made from the finest materials, and gold was abundant, often used for decorations. It truly was the kingdom of silk and splendor.
The attire of the Shilla kingdom is characterized with its wide sleeves and delicate details around the sleeves and collar. Hanbok styles differed by class, yet all of them had slimmer silhouettes compared to the wider hanbok of latter periods. And this sophisticated look is especially tied to Gyeongju, the ancient capital of the Shilla kingdom. But what sets Park's work apart is not only her tailoring. It's the traditional dyeing techniques. The process is meticulous. Hand-picked flowers are dried and infused alongside berries to create the red palette. Then pieces of white silk are soaked, dried, and soaked again, often more than 50 times. With each soaking, the fabric absorbs more color, giving it earthy yet vibrant hues. As Gyeongju prepares to host APEC 2025 Korea, Gyeongsangbuk-do Province and Gyeongju are planning to showcase key elements of Korean traditional culture, and hanbok is taking center stage. During the international event, world leaders will be given the traditional attire, bringing Korea's elegance to the global stage. But it's more than recognition for Park. The honor for her lies in hanbok leaping forward onto the world stage. In every dip of dye and every stitch of silk, Park works on continuing the legacy. An Sung-jin, Arirang News, Gyeongju.
Now, amid the hot weather in Korea, people are finding ways to cool off in a unique and spooky way at a historical-themed village that transforms into a haunted world full of traditional ghost and spine-chilling horror experiences. Our Park Gon-woo was there.
A quiet, peaceful village by day. But as darkness falls, a chill creeps in and eerie whispers echo through the air. Under the crescent moon, ghosts began to appear. Summer may be the hottest season, but for many in Korea, it's also the coolest in a spooky kind of way. One popular destination is the Horror Village in the Dead of Night Festival, running until the end of August at the Korean folk village in Yongin in Gyeonggi-do Province. Korean ghosts are souls with unresolved sorrow, or han. They don't just scare you, but they carry a story, one they never got to finish. So what kind of sorrow are you holding on to?
결혼을 못한 채로 죽었어.
From virgin ghosts to a local version of the Grim Reaper, these traditional Korean spirits send chills down visitors' spines, especially when they appear out of nowhere.
It's been scorching hot lately, so I thought this horror experience might blow away the heat. I kept sweating and shivering.
It's way different to watching movies.
From haunted escape rooms to scream-filled walkthroughs, flashing red lights and scary sounds greet those who dare to enter.
나가! 이리 들어오는 거 아니야? 저쪽이야! 잘못 들어왔어!
Even the food gets creepy, including the bloody finger latte, topped with a broken finger-shaped cookie. Some restaurants are splattered with blood, with things appearing above visitors' heads.
I thought it was a regular restaurant until I saw ghosts hanging above. I almost fell over in shock, but it's unique and fun. I was too scared to even feel the heat.
The restrooms are also haunted, dimly lit up with red lights, with ghosts waiting for you, some appearing in the mirror. At the end of the night, visitors who turned into ghosts with costumes and painted faces competed with each other to see who was the scariest. It seems like a peaceful, happy ending. But beware, these ghosts will return with the next dark night until August 24th. So, for those looking for an experience of Korea's haunted summer nights, good luck. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
Until yesterday, there had been 21 tropical nights in July in Seoul this year, the same number as in 1994, which was the highest ever. If Seoul has another tropical night tonight, it will break the tie with 1994 and hold the all-time record alone. With hot temperatures even during the night, it is likely that a new record will be set in Seoul. In addition, a strong heat wave has been appearing everywhere, with the heat wave advisories on the east coast of Gyeongsang-do provinces being upgraded to a warning. The summer heat will cover the whole country again tomorrow. It will start warm tomorrow morning again, with Seoul at 28 degrees Celsius and Daegu and Gyeongju at 24 degrees. Highs will stay hot at around 35 to 36 degrees in most parts of the country. Scorching heat of around 35 degrees will last until early next week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. For all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.